a very, very long time. So she's gonna talk to you guys about some CPR, some freedom from smoking programs that the hospital offers, and, so, I'll turn it over to Miss Debbie. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you for letting me come. I'm always treasure any opportunity to talk about the stuff that we do and why it matters and stuff like that. And just to refresh people, because like Millie said, I've been involved in that side of health and wellness stuff since like the 80s, got my nursing back then and stuff. But since I've been back at the hospital, I'm more in the cardiac area, and not only do I do the outreach, but I also do a lot of the in-house stuff, the in-house cardiac stuff. So what that means is I've seen a lot more of what happens to people who are going through cardiac surgery and have had cardiac events and things like that. So become very familiar with this little guy. So I've learned a ton. Just as a point of reference, if you, I'm old, I've been a nurse for 100 years, and the things I do now, I would say 90% of what I do now I did not know 5 years ago. So there's never a time that we're done learning. There's always a time we can challenge ourselves to do new things and meet new people and try new projects and things like that, because the more we learn, the more we challenge ourselves, the more young we stay. If you only tell my niece that, I'd be really, really happy. So. All right, just a real couple quick stuff. We'll run through this is how I kind of introduce it to when I teach anytime in the public. It's just some real basics about the heart, because sometimes there's some assumptions we make that maybe are not really good assumptions. So we always talk about red and blue being the primary colors of the heart. What do the red and blue colors represent? Like,
Is
why do we
red an
use red?
artery?
Vein and artery.
In most cases, with the exception of the pulmonary. So what is different about the red blood than the bluish, this kind of blood? What's different about them? Why is one red and one blue?
Has oxygen.
Right, the red is full of oxygen, it's filling up, so it's energizing the body, and the blue is depleted of oxygen and needs to refuel. So the blue stuff that's like this, that's coming up, where's it going? To your heart, and where's your heart gonna send it?
Back out.
To where?
All the other
Lungs.
organs.
To your lungs. Your lungs are gonna give it
Oxygen.
oxygen, so it's gonna turn what color?
Red.
So it's gonna go back to your,
Heart.
it's gonna pump it to your hole. You're gonna use it all up, so it's gonna turn,
Blue.
so it's gonna go back to your,
Heart.
to go back to your,
Lungs.
to turn,
Red.
to go back to your. Oh, you guys are talking. Now, if you were in middle school, we'd be going, go ahead, children. Okay, so yeah, so the point is, your body uses oxygen for fuel. It has to pump it around your body, and if anything impedes that flow, it's gonna give you problems, right? So, tell me some of the things that you can do to keep let's go this way. Things you cannot control that affect your heart health. What things can you not control that affect your heart health?
Your genetics.
Yep, and genetics is not, we go to grandma's for fried chicken on Sunday afternoon. That's family history, okay? We're talking genetics. We're talking people with smaller valves, bigger arteries, smaller arteries, that's genetic. Family history is how we eat, the fact that we always said everything when I was a kid was in a frying pan. We kept it on the frying pan from the time she made it till everyone got home from practices, and we all ate it out of the frying pan, So that's not genetics, that's family history. So what else besides genetics? There's 3 other things that we really can't affect.
Is it DNA? Or that's genetics?
That'd be
too?
genetics,
Yeah.
yeah. Our age, okay? By age, we're more likely as we get older to have heart disease. I always liken it to if you have, this sounds terrible, an old garden hose and you leave it out in the yard forever, over time, they just kind of get crunchy and crackly and brittle, right? Well, as we get older, our body parts just get a little bit less flexible, and they are more likely to have problems. So we can't change our age, can't change our genetics.
If you're a woman,
That's right, gender.
you cannot change
That's
if you're
right.
going through the change of life.
Well,
Because
there's the
that gave
point.
me SVTs, which I still take diltiazem, from now on, because my
Yeah.
heart rhythm isn't correct.
Because your hormones have changed.
So whether you're a man or a woman, it makes a big difference too.
Right. And women tend to have less issues with heart until we go through menopause, and then we're pretty equal with men. Because we have estrogen to protect us. And then as the estrogen starts to deplete, testosterone and progesterone start to increase.
That is so
That's why
unfair.
we become feisty as we
I know,
get older.
it's so
That
unfair.
is so unfair.
As we get older, that's why we get feisty, because we become more like men. So you can't change genetics, age, gender, or race. Those are the 4 things that have an effect on our risk factor for heart disease, but we can't do anything about them. So what things can we do something about?
Our food intake, our exercise.
Yep, whether or
Where
not
we
you
live.
move, or whether you sit, whether you eat fast food, or if you're eating healthy and cooking and all that kind of stuff, if you're making good choices, as we make good choices, and you know, there's balance. It's all about 80-20 rule, right? Those are some of the things. What are some of the things you can affect?
Like, well, that is considered lifestyle, what you eat.
Well, lifestyle can cover a lot, right?
The way you manage your stress.
The way you manage your stress,
Exercise.
movement, yeah, anytime moving is instead of sitting. They actually have done a lot of research now, and there's an article yesterday came out about should we focus more on don't sit so much, or should we focus more on move more? And I think the idea is our sitting has gone from an average of an hour a day to 6 hours a day, and that goes up with screen time. You know, and that's like the leisure time. That's not even our work related. The other big one, you're missing a couple big ones.
Don't smoke.
Thank you. We'll
Yeah.
talk about smoking in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the one, and I've always been passionate about it, but since I've been, like, every Monday morning, I meet with the surgeons. We meet as a group about the surgeons, talk about the patients from last week and the patients from this week. The thing that comes up every week is, yeah, we did this $50,000 leg procedure, and he went home and kept smoking, and he came back, and now he's clotted up again. It happens, I mean, every week. There's someone, he went home, his lungs were black when we brought him back, we can only do so much. You can only fix what you can fix, right? So smoking is huge. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Anything else you can think of that we can affect?
Stay on your medication if you're
Yeah,
prescribed medication.
absolutely.
Stay on that.
You get it as soon as you go home. Don't wait 3 days or for the follow-up to get your Plavix, because that can clot up a stent real fast. So anyway, so you're very good. You guys answer better than middle schoolers, so pat yourselves on the back. So the arteries on here, just like in your arms and your legs and everywhere else, the arteries feed these muscles. This is a very specific kind of muscle, and it is it's fed by the arteries, and they're all over. I mean, if you took away the muscle and the fat, this is just just miles and miles and miles of capillaries and arteries and veins that are covering here. So if for some reason, oh, I don't have a rubber band here. I always have my rubber band.
Do you need a rubber band?
Oh, I have this thing I just do, and I always have my rubber. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, I was gonna say I always have my rubber band. So okay, so if you have an artery that is occluded, okay, so if I have an artery that's to my finger is occluded, what's happening right now within my fingertip?
Circulation.
Right. So what color is it going to start turning?
Red.
Blue.
White.
Blue.
No. Oh.
And why is it going to say turn bluish?
No circulation,
Yeah,
no
the blood flow that's used up oxygen is gonna be there, and the new stuff can't get there, okay? So this has only been, 15, 20 seconds, it starts to be a little uncomfortable, but it's not painful, right? So if I have an artery like that that's in my heart, and it's occluded, what's gonna start happening to the blood flow to the area that's feeding?
Clog up.
Yeah,
Well,
so this is essentially like a
same.
clot, yep. So essentially, so if there's a clot down here, and essentially that I'm clotted this, that means that whole portion of the heart is not being fed, okay? So just like right now, my finger's starting to get a little sore, these people are gonna start to have a little bit of, oh my gosh, what's going on, They're gonna start feeling something, because this whole part of their heart, depending upon where it is, if it's up here, this is what we call the widowmaker, up this little tiny thing, it feeds the whole left side, then you're gonna feel big old monster pain. If it's the little teeny tiny ones on the end, you might not feel it quite as severely, but either way there's gonna be pain, because this is painful, okay? If I let this on for a day, what's gonna happen to my finger?
Follow.
It'll probably still stay attached by skin, but it'll be definitely dead. So could I still go and open up the artery? Sure. I can still open up the artery inside, but it could be dead muscle. So the people who wait 2 days, 3 days to be seen after they have chest pain really bad, those muscles have then been atrophied so badly because of lack of oxygen that you end up with congestive heart failure, muscle weakness, because the muscles have been deprived of oxygen for too long. It does not take long. That little bit of time has already caused that much in my finger. So think about the people who wait hours or days to get seen for help. Their heart is starving for oxygen. So I'm gonna let that go long enough. I sent 2 kids to the nurse's office with just looking at my finger like that, Dexter. I was like, okay guys, if you don't like this stuff, look away for a little bit. So, the idea is that that part of the heart is starving, whichever part. Now, it's the right side of the heart, left side of the heart. Right side, you know, is sending it to the lungs, left side sending it to the body. That's why the left side's bigger. So whichever part is starving, you're gonna have this real intense, typically real intense chest pressure or pain. So besides chest pressure and pain, what are the most common things that people talk about when it comes to, I think you're having a heart attack, besides the chest pressure and pain?
Numbness in their arm, going up their neck and their jaw.
Numbness is not so much the thing as just pressure or
Pain,
squeezing.
pressure.
Is it like-
Numbness is more commonly used in
Shortness
neuro.
of breath.
Shortness of
shortness
breath
of
is
breath.
common because of the pain.
Yeah.
There's two other really common ones.
Is it like gas or something?
People will
Indigestion.
blame it on gas. They don't get gas, but they blame it on gas.
Indigestion,
Blurry, blurred
shortness of
vision.
breath, you may get
There's
like
one
some
more.
tingling up the arm, to going up the neck and the jaw. That's my mother-in-law just went through.
Okay.
Sweating.
Sweaty, that's the other one.
Uh,
The most common
sweating,
ones are really,
nausea.
really tight squeezing pain. And then nausea, very common, they throw up, sweating. Those are probably the ones that are most common. We often can get it in our backs. Women are more likely to get something we call, we refer to as feeling of impending doom. They have this feeling like something really bad's gonna happen. Women say that more often. Long-term diabetics often will not even have chest pain. They'll have more of the radiating pain to their neck and their arms because, as you know, with diabetes, you can have neuropathy, and over time, the sensation of your nervous system is not as intense. So you might not even have. We've had diabetics that don't even have the chest pain, but they're sweating, they're nauseated, their arms hurt. You know, I had a guy come in and all he had was intense arm pain. You know, but it was very intense and very sudden. So they came in right away and did EKG, and of course he was having a heart attack. And so the idea is we don't want this thing to lose circulation, you know? Over time, there's little bits of accumulation based on how you live, if you smoke, if you move, all those kinds of things to contribute to how much circulation somebody has. The other thing about this though is what do we know, like if you have a ceiling fan, you know, fans in here, but there's a fan. Okay, so I know that if I have a fan and it's working, it's moving air. That's its function. What makes the fan work? Electricity, okay? So this one's not working because it's not plugged in. Okay, so we have a fan that's functioning because electricity is making the blades spin, right? But if I unplug it, I can get on there and I can spin the blades and spin the blades and spin the blades. It's still moving air, right? But what's a better solution? Plug it back in, right? Reestablish electrical current. So with the heart, your heart has its own electrical current. You guys, I'm sure you've all heard of pacemakers, defibrillators, and all that good stuff. So your heart has its own pacemaker, like these, okay? But this is the one, when this one's not working, this one will. So you have these wonderful pacemakers in your heart that send little rhythms through and keep the circulation going as much as it needs to, okay? It's got its own electrical current. When the blood flow gets disrupted over a long time and we're having a heart attack, sometimes that can cause a problem. But more often, when an electrical current's disrupted, it's not related to French fries and things like that. It can be a 15-year-old, 17-year-old, 34-year-old. Last year we had those three, 15, 17, 34-year-olds, who had cardiac arrest because of electrical current disruption. So cardiac arrest is electrical current disruption. Heart attack is the stuff we talked about where your parts of your heart are aching and hurting because they're starving for oxygen. So I always say you're having a heart attack as something that's progressively having. You have a cardiac arrest, bam, you're down. So I'll use young Derek, who was in sports bikes. He's been in ads and stuff for us, so he doesn't care if we talk about him, but he was walking across the court and was talking to his cousin and face planted. 34 years old. No history, no reason. He had some dysrhythmia in the lub-dub in his heart. And it went from lub-dub to quiver, which is called fibrillate, right? So fibrillating, we stop with a defibrillator. Right, okay, so we'll go through that one in a second. So thankfully, there was a defibrillator and they shocked him, and typically it takes 2 or 3 shocks to bring somebody back. But that is like replugging in the fan, okay? That reestablishes the current. Doing the compressions we do is like spinning the blades. We are keeping the air moving, or in this case, keeping the blood moving by compressing it, but we aren't gonna restart the heart that way. We have to plug it back in. We gotta reestablish the electrical current, okay? So they're both critical, but that's why getting this thing going, you can see how me hand spinning the blades is not gonna be nearly as effective as me plugging it in. me pushing on the heart is not gonna be nearly as effective as re-establishing the current with the defibrillator. So
I
that's
have
why
a
we.
question.
Yeah.
So on 2 occasions, because I do take a medication for, for the SVTs or SPVs. So my heart has gotten down to like 36 and 34 before, and I felt really nauseous. What happens to that person? Will you pass out? And if you do, will you come back?
Well, if it's
Just so my husband knows.
I mean, if it's,
Just
you
leave.
can, I mean, so a cardiac arrest would be like if it actually stops effectively going. You could pass out because your circulation is not getting up to your brain, in which case I'd recommend you lay down so you help that flow. So, I mean, it really is, if you passed out, more than likely the blood flow would return and you would still be breathing and moving and responding, so you would need help, but you probably would ultimately end up with one of these guys if it's going down there.
So let me ask you, and well, you know what happens? It happens whenever the barometric pressure changes. Like if we're
Really?
gonna get a tornado or something, I can tell you that's what something's getting ready to happen, because I used to have a pneumothorax, and then I have this, and they both kind of act up at the same time. But what my question is that when I'm feeling that way, can I just get up off the floor and let me jog around or something, get restarted, like re-electrified?
I don't know why it's going down so low.
I think it's because of the medication.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't do that. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know.
That's
There's
an
an awful lot.
that's
But
an
I told you, I
interesting
said I know
answer for
much.
me. It's
I
like,
wish I had a good answer, but that's, thankfully, I don't work on the clinical, that kind of piece, so that's not there yet. So, anyway, the point is, if someone's having a heart attack, the most important thing is get to the ER or call an ambulance, one or the other. Ambulance drivers are not taxi drivers. Ambulance drivers are highly trained. They will start the IVs, they will transmit the EKGs, they will give the medications that we need them to give to start things off. By the time they get to us from the ambulance, they already have their aspirin, their morphine, their oxygen, and they've got IVs set. So please don't ever think of them as just a waste of time. We want them. Now, typically, in town here, it's about 4 to 6 minute response time is pretty normal in Cape County. When you get outside of Cape County, and even in like parts of Perry County and the outside, it can be a lot longer, which is why we really like people to learn the whole CPR with breathing. But what I teach in the public is the hands only, which is what we're gonna go through. So most importantly is people come to the door and if they go like this or say my chest hurts or I think something heart, you'll have an EKG within 4 to 6 minutes. The doctors look at the EKG, they evaluate it, and if it's something significant, we activate what's called the STEMI line and you head to the cath lab, and typically within 45 to 50 minutes you've got a stent in your heart. Just as a kind of an idea of what that looks like, because sometimes this kind of helps to help people understand. So this is the right side of your heart. So this patient came in with a heart attack, and when we did the angiogram, they put the dye in, you can see right here, this is the right side of the heart, it just stops, okay? So when they go in and put the stent in, you can see that this whole part of the heart was starving for oxygen. So think of that all as was the tip of my finger. That whole part of the heart was starving for oxygen. So of course it's gonna hurt. Here's the left side, same thing here. The left side of the heart, that whole big section that's fed, you've got stopped right here. And here's where the stent was put in, and then all that was starving for oxygen. So it kind of makes it easier to understand how much pain somebody would be in and how much of a problem it is when they come in and that's how much pain they're in. Okay, because the whole part of their heart was starving. So if you ignore it and ignore it and ignore it, that's when you end up with muscle tissue dying, and then you end up with congestive heart failure. So we want people to act. We know that if someone walks to our door and says, my chest hurts, from here to here, we know exactly what to do and how long it takes. Our problem is, my chest hurts, but I gotta get the grass cut, I gotta get the lawn mowed, I gotta get the field in, I gotta get whatever on a time, blah, blah, blah. So now we've waited 2 days, and now it's an old MI, and now muscle damage has occurred. So we wanna encourage people to get done faster. So, for a heart attack, we typically, it's good to know some things don't change, Millie.
Yes, I know.
Not that we haven't tried over the years. Okay, so what we say is if you're standing there at the county fair and someone in front of you is talking and they all of a sudden collapse, okay? We're looking for 3 things. We're looking for, are you moving? Are you breathing? Are you responding? We don't do pulse checks anymore, okay? Only like healthcare in the hospital we would do that. But are you moving, breathing, responding? You can't move without a heartbeat. You can't speak or moan without a heartbeat, and you can't you're not breathing without a heartbeat. So what we do is we have people look for those three things. Are you moving, are you breathing, are you responding, okay? If they're not, you call 911 right away. That is priority. Pushing on the chest without the ambulance on the way is a waste, not a waste of time, but it's kind of futile. Because when are you gonna stop? Well, I've done it in a minute now, I think I'll go call it. Ambulance on the way is number one. So if you're at the park, you're out here somewhere, you don't have reception, flag down a car, knock on a door, do something to get the ambulance. Ambulance on its way is priority, okay, for a cardiac arrest. Now, if they collapse and they are breathing, they still need help. They just don't need compressions, okay? Sometimes I think people think, well, if they collapse but they can move, breathe, or respond, I guess they'll just leave them there, No, still call 911. Just realize that they are not a cardiac arrest. So cardiac arrest is love dub, love dub, love dub, turns into fibrillate. Now realize too, fibrillation lasts 3 or 4 minutes and then it goes to this, asystole. This does not help this. That's why getting the AED as fast as possible is critical. Because while it's like this, the AED can still help. Once it gets to this, that's when they need the adrenaline and the drugs and all the stuff that the ambulance has in it, okay? So that's why we say this is priority. 911 and AED are priority, okay? So, they collapse, it's still the same as always. Are you okay, are you okay? They're not moving, breathing, responding. Call 911, go grab the AED, and then go. And we always tell kids, when we talk with the public, I was like, if you don't remember what this is called, just tell them to go get that heart shock thing. Go get that thing. And then this is one thing, I started getting certified in like 1978 or something like that. One thing that hasn't changed is compression. So we still do this from the straight arm, we still go straight down, and we just push. That's it. So what we teach now is when we teach the public, people not a certification, we don't even teach breathing. Because if I collapse right now, I have 10 minutes of oxygen in my blood, okay? So for 10 minutes, you're still pumping oxygenated blood to my brain and to my organs. After 10 minutes, it's not so good. That's why I'm saying if you live further out, we really like people to learn to do the whole thing, 30 compressions, 2 breaths. But that's a whole certification class. So what we do is, are you okay? Moving, breathing, responding, call 911, get the AED, and push. And just don't stop. And I will tell you that when you start doing this, people think it's forever. And because one of my parts of my job is to time it. And people feel like it's forever, and I time it, it's 4 minutes. So most people, when we shock them, most people get shock, 2 minutes CPR, shock, 2 minutes CPR, shock. The third shock is typically place these all over the place, like next weekend, I think, sometime soon. I'm going to New Wells and training them on theirs. But we're trying to get these into the more remote areas. So they cost about $1,500 a piece. So the ambassadors are raising enough to give 10 or 11 of these away every year. And we have a little grant application online, so if you have little remote places, that's kind of what we're looking for. Here in town, you're minutes from help, but there's a lot of places in our community that are not. So, so we do want people to put those applications in. To me, the more applications go in, the more they know that we need to keep doing this, so I don't want them to stop. So, and then what we do is we require that they let us come train people. So, but they all have the basic same thing. Ignore this is part of my training. It's a training tool. I have to tell the machine something. In real life, you wouldn't have one of these. I would worry someone's gonna get it and go, where's that thing she was holding? So, no, that's just a training thing. But this is how they all work together. You always are gonna open them. They always have pads. You might have to take them out of the pouch. They always will show on the pads where the stickers should go. Those are consistently the same regardless if they're attached together with the blue thing or not. They'll always have something on the pad that shows where to put it, okay? You always have to turn it on. Now, again, this is a trainer, so it has to do a little test run.
Unit okay. Stay calm. Check responsiveness. Call for help.
Okay, we're gonna lay this on the chest,
Attach defib pads to patient's bare chest.
and they all talk to you.
Don't touch patient.
Okay, I don't wanna touch
Analyzing.
him. If I touch him, it's analyzing me and saying he's okay, because I have a heartbeat, so they think he did.
Don't touch patient. Analyzing.
In real life, these things stick like mouse pads.
Shock advised. Don't touch patient. Press flashing shock
There's
button.
always gonna be a flashing button, it's always gonna tell you what to do. So we push that,
Shock
the
delivered.
patient will
Start
shock,
CPR.
and we go right back to the chest. We do that until it tells us to stop, analyzing heart rhythm, do not touch the patient, and keep going. And you just keep going and going and going until the machine says to stop, okay? If you're comfortable with the compressions and breathing,
Continue CPR.
if you're comfortable with the breathing, we want you to breathe. But if you're not, just know that compressing is adequate. Just do something, don't do nothing. That's my biggest thing, don't do nothing. So in real life, these things stick like super, super sticky. But thinking about what you know about electricity, what things are you gonna wanna be particularly cautious of?
Metal? Maybe.
Metal, so metal bleachers,
Water.
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 So the worst possible place is gonna be at the side of the pool and the metal bleachers, right? So don't kneel in a puddle of water next to them when you shock them. Whoever pushes the button is responsible to make sure no one's touching them. And the issue they have is grandma comes running up and goes, "No, Johnny, are you okay?" And then they both get it. So whoever pushes the button is responsible to make sure no one's touching the patient.
So if you're, okay, so say my heart is going and they're trying to shock him and I touch him, would that knock my heart out or?
Yes,
It
very
would-
likely, because it's gonna basically do the reverse to you. So in his case, it's trying to restart it. In your case, it's gonna just put it into dysrhythmia probably.
Dang.
Yep, it can. So we don't want someone to get, it's about 150 joules of power to start with, and it goes up progressively to I think 200.
It's like a
that's good
taser.
hit. Yeah, I don't know how much a taser is. I'm not sure how much power is in a taser. But-
Do the county, fire departments have those
Uh-huh.
too? Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah. Yep. These, and the nice thing about these, a regular defibrillator like the ones you see on TV that go shock you, they're $35,000 to $50,000, and those they have to determine what to do. This will only shock ventricular fibrillation. It'll only shock the bottom of the heart quivering. It will not shock AFib. It won't shock asystole. It only has one function, and that is to get the bottom of the heart. So if it says no shock advised, either it's got a different kind of rhythm that wouldn't be beneficial, or it doesn't have, or it's got a heartbeat, or it's flatline. But you don't know that. See, in the ambulance, they look at the monitor, the screen, and they look at it and they see it. Okay, we don't have to do that. It'll say shock advised or no shock advised. If they're not moving, breathing, responding, you stay on the chest and keep pushing. Just follow instructions. You never have to worry about making a mistake, because it will not shock anyone unless they are in the right rhythm that would help it. Okay? We never turn it off. We never take the pads off. Anything like that. When we give these to places, we also include pediatric pads, so kids under about 8. These pediatric pads are roughly that size. If you do swap them out, they're always really easy. Literally, you take the other pair of pads, you do this, and you stick them back in. Pediatric pads usually go front and back. But again, it'll show that on the pictures, on the pads. Obviously, this kind wouldn't work.
What about if you're with a woman and she's got a bra on, do you need to put the pad underneath
We-
her bra or?
Reality is you should
Take it
cut
out.
it off, cut it down the middle.
Okay.
The only issue if you can make good skin contact, depends how big they are. If you can make really good skin contact for all of it, it's not as big a deal. But if someone's kind of heavier, the other thing is most of these pads also, like I don't know if you can kind of see, but the wire in here, I could actually pull this apart to give it more room to expand for a bigger person. So they're made that way as well. You don't want this over an underwire bra, but I don't know if any underwires are really wire anymore. I think they're mostly probably plastic, I don't know. But you wouldn't want to lay it over the top of a pacemaker. You know, pacemakers are usually typically up in the little pocket up here. It wouldn't lay there anyway, but in case they had like something on this side, you wouldn't want to lay it on top. If they're super hairy, it has to adhere well to the skin. So we always recommend if you have one that you put a little big razor in there to shave off those areas. What Scott will say is take another second pair of pads, rub it down really good and go and tear it off. But you have to have, it
They
only
won't
works if you have
feel
a
it.
second set of pads.
They won't feel it.
That's right. If they do, then you saved them.
Yep.
So that only works if you have a second pair of pads, though. You won't want to waste a pair of pads because and once they're used, of course, they're gone. They're no good anymore. These can be reused, but you'd have to replenish the batteries because that would take a lot of. There's 10 lithium batteries in the back is what keeps them going. So that brings up that every AED also has a window, and the window is either going to be an OK or a green check mark, and that's going to mean that the batteries are good. Also, these expire in about 3 years. Think about an old Band-Aid that you find in your camping supplies. You open up Band-Aids and they're all crunchy, right? So same kind of thing, they go crunchy too. It doesn't do any good if they don't stick. So usually when one or the other expires, replace both. And these are about $95 or so, and the batteries are about $100 too for the 10 lithium batteries, okay? So highly recommend that if you are in a facility that has one or gets one of the things that we always are encouraging people is that whoever does another check, like if someone does a fire extinguisher check or backdoor check or whatever it is you're checking, have that person also do the AED check. And that's just looking to make sure that the check mark is green, or it says okay, whichever your type of AED is. But they're very easy to use. I cannot begin to, I mean, there's nobody who's, as long as you know what it's for, you can use it. There's no special training, with the exception of knowing what to do with it, you know, that what it's for. So we really, really encourage people to be comfortable. Almost every place, when you start paying attention, theaters, you know, grocery stores and all that kind of stuff, everybody's got AEDs in most cases. The only place I found consistently not have them is Walmart, oddly enough, but I don't know why that is. I just feel like anytime you have a crowd of people around, that they should always be part of your policy to have this around. But they're not cheap, but they obviously, you know, I can name you 5 people off the top of my head that are grateful that they were around, because they do save a life. And that, like I said, this restarts the heart. This circulates blood, and that's important. So if that's all you got, that's all you got. But having access to this is priority. So 911, AED, push. So the fun thing is, they found out that most people could not find a pulse when there was one, and then a lot of people would not put their mouth on a stranger's mouth no matter what. So they just wouldn't do anything. So the education was, do something, go to the chest and push, okay? The other thing we found out is that a lot of people would not do CPR on women because the taboo of touching a woman's chest. So they were waiting for the ambulance, they weren't doing anything. There's been a lot of research on that the last couple of years, and they're trying to get across, it's okay, they're dead, you know? They're dead right there, right now, so do something. So they will forgive you for touching their chest, but they did find that was a significant decrease, or less women getting help because of that fear of touching. So the other thing I'm really conscious of is my wonderful little smoking world. So I've spent a lot of years working on this stuff. So I brought a few tools along. I'll just give to Millie to give you guys later. But one thing I'm just amazed, you know, a really funny story about this. I wanted to have a pack of cigarettes to use just as a sample, you know, as a prop. And we had a Run for God class. And the Run for God class is teaching you to run a 5K. And it's all in a Christian perspective and stuff like that. So we had this final training run. So the whole group took off on their training run, running for God, and this fell out of someone's pocket. I was like, haha, God just taught you something. So I've had my little pack of cigarettes now for a couple of years. But anyway, the thing that's most amazing to me is we do smoking cessation education. We don't do classes anymore because people don't come to regular ongoing classes because there's so much online help. The power that these things have over people is absolutely staggering, okay? The thing is, you know, every single capillary in your body is affected by what you do with these things. Every single one. I mean, people think of it as a lung disease. They think of it as heart disease. Your toes, and we have people whose circulation, their legs is shot, you know, every single capillary in your body, miles and miles and miles, is affected by this stuff. So the nicotine that is in these things is irritating the inside walls of the arteries. They become like little tiny scabs. Every little bit of fat that goes through catches on them. They get narrower and narrower, circulation gets decreased, and ultimately we do bypasses on legs, bypasses on hearts. So I feel very passionately about it because it is so such a big, constant issue, and it's so blatant and so preventable. Now there's a lot of things that we do that aren't particularly healthy, but this one is a challenge because what we do now is, if somebody's really interested in quitting, I work with them one-on-one. So we just have a thing where they end up connected with me. I got a lady who called me this morning and left a message. I have to call her back. But I just meet one-on-one because trying to do classes, people just won't go. They don't show up. And I block a night and no one comes, and you're like, you know. But so when I work one-on-one with someone, we can figure out, are you nicotine dependent? Are you bored? Is this just something you've done for 35 years? Do you always sit by the back door with your husband at the end of the day and talk about the day? I mean, what is it that you get from doing it? And it's no different than my Diet Coke. It's no different from chocolate. It's whatever habit it is that you have. If you want to change it, you got to evaluate why you do it. And that doesn't matter what the habit is. So I don't pick on smoking like it's a big deal or whatever, but it is a big deal for health. But I don't pretend it's like a bigger challenge. Like if Millie or I decided to quit our Diet Coke, we'd probably
Not in here.
be locked up for a couple days. So we do a little nicotine dependent questionnaire, and this is things like, do you have a cigarette within the first 5 or 10 minutes of getting up in the morning? Do you wake up during the night to have a cigarette? Do you have more than a certain amount in a day? All that kind of stuff. And that helps us know if nicotine is your issue. Because a lot of people, it's not nicotine. If you don't have your first cigarette till 10 in the morning, it's not nicotine. And when people go back after they quit for 3 months, nicotine didn't bring them there. That's totally habit.
Stress.
Yeah, that works, but we do a lot of stuff to deal with stress. You know,
I just
we
eat.
we drink. So we drink whatever we drink, whatever, and so there's always like I had a guy who came to me not long ago to quit, and he was getting ready to start radiation therapy for cancer, and I was like, this is not the day for you to try quitting smoking. You do not, with all the uncertainty and discomfort and fear that you're going through right now. This is not the time for you to quit smoking. You don't do it when the kids are ready to graduate high school and you're getting a daughter getting married and you got to time it right. So we worked on it progressively. We waited till he got through some of his treatments. We had a plan. We worked on weaning him down. We worked on, and then by the time he got into about 3 weeks of his treatments, he was done. He quit. But you don't do that when you're in the middle of all that fear and anxiety and all that stuff. So we're planning it. That's part of what we do. It's to say, let's look at what's a reasonable plan for you, because you got to be reasonable. I mean, most people. We used to say people try to quit or practice quitting 3 to 5 times. It's more like 30 times that people will say. It's kind of like, I'm gonna go on a diet on Monday. I'm not gonna eat that after. I'm just gonna have cake today, but I want to eat tomorrow. How many times do we all do that? It's the same thing with cigarettes. People go, I'm gonna try it, but not now. But then the day comes and they're like, I'll do it tomorrow. So usually it's like 30 times. The other questions are, you ready to quit? Do you want to quit for yourself? Trying to quit for a spouse does not work, because you get mad. You just like, I'll show him, or he's that, and they just go get a cigarette. Okay. So have I tried to quit before? Do I believe it's dangerous? My biggest number one thing I do when I'm trying to help anybody change their behavior, or because they want to, and I never make the first call. Even if I had a patient from surgery referred to me, I said, give him my number, because you got to take the first step. I'll chase you down after that, but the people have to take the first step, because otherwise it's like, she wants me to, or she's making me, and that doesn't work. So my biggest number one question is the why. Why? It is uncomfortable to change. It is uncomfortable. If it's not, you haven't changed. So if anybody ever started walking, and hadn't walked for a while, and you get it the next day, your calves hurt and you're tight and you're sore and you're tired, it's because your body's readjusting to a new normal, right? So you guys cross your arms. You all have done this at some point, I'm sure. Okay? So I'm 61 years old. So for a long, long, long time, I've done this, right? All right, so if I had to unhook them and rehook them in the opposite direction, go ahead and unhook them and rehook them, but the other way. I mean, something as simple as this is a habit. But if you ask me to rehook them, I'm going back to the old way, because this is comfortable. As simple as crossing your arms. So if there's something you do every day, 20 times a day, is it not going to be hard to change that habit? Absolutely. If every morning with a cup of coffee you have a cigarette, is it going to be hard? Absolutely. Is it going to be uncomfortable? Absolutely. I've been getting up for this reboot class that starts at 5:30 in Cape, and I live in Jackson. Wow, talk about changing my lifestyle. Just getting up at 4:45 and getting out the door. I mean, but it's worth it, because I'm starting to feel differently, feel stronger, and work on certain things, So is it worth it? Absolutely. But do I still get a challenge every morning when that silly alarm goes off? Absolutely. Do I still reconsider every time I wake up? Absolutely. Then I go, you paid for it, go do it. So this is a guide to quitting smoking methods. I'm going to leave all these with Millie. But this is methods that are out there that people can use. I believe in prepared cold turkey, which means that you wean yourself down, you plan a day, you take your time, because everything you take to help you is going to have a side effect. My favorite across the board is the patch. And the reason is people get hooked on the gum, and they'll just keep chewing the gum forever, for years and years and years. They will, the Wellbutrin and Chantix have their benefits. Wellbutrin can't be used if you're already taking some kind of antidepressant or anything like that. Can make you feel real spacey. Chantix can give you bad dreams, but it can work. So everything has its place, but it just seems like, the thing that needs to change is your behavior, and behavior is not changed by the medications and things like that. So, but again, we go through all that together. Some people, it's the inhaler, it looks like a chunky cigarette. It's got a little nicotine in it, because it gives you that hand oral thing that a lot of people like. For some people, it's just this.
Mhm.
Heck, we did it when we started with the security a long time ago. I don't know if you remember, Millie, when we went smoke free at the hospital, we did all this stuff. For security, we used the half straws. They're the same feel as a cigarette. And then if you put a menthol cough drop in your mouth and you do if you're a menthol smoker, you get that same sensation of air. The point being, if people are interested in quitting, what we do is we really want to talk about the why and make that first and front and foremost. Why be uncomfortable? Same reason about why you start walking. Why it's uncomfortable, it hurts. Well, because I really need to be healthier. I really want to feel better. I want to be with my grandkids. I want to spend time at the zoo without being pooped and being that grandma that's sitting on the bench, right? So you gotta decide what your whys are.
When we used to go into the companies and do it when we had the grant, the straws did help.
Yeah.
I had a couple that were down, I think it's Havco down south,
Uh-huh.
that they used it, and they even said that's the only thing, and they kept doing the straws. Then what helped them was they made a money jar, and instead of buying the cigarettes, they placed it in there. And I had a couple, and him and his wife saved enough money between the two of them from not smoking and putting it in that jar. They bought him a brand new truck.
Wow.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was awesome. And then I mean, they did awesome with it. But it
Yeah,
was a
usually
struggle.
the stuff that you do is like, it seems like, well, that's kind of dorky, but it works.
It does.
Dorky
Those
stuff
straws
works.
really worked with the
Yeah, the
people.
deep breathing works,
Mhm.
the straws work. We had people, we used to always have, in the cigarette, we'd have them put a golf pencil, and then we had a little thing we tucked in the side, and it had, you were supposed to mark down like cigarette number 1, I was happy said, talk to Melly to reach me. I'm the only one who does it right now, and like I said, I just do it one-on-one. We usually meet together once or twice, and then after that, we just talk on the phone or text or whatever, and it's real easy that way, because people are busy. Sometimes they just need an accountability partner who's not their family, you know, or someone who's gonna wag a finger. I told you. Won't do that. So, questions or thoughts? I mean, that's kind of haphazard, but kind of all goes together because a lot of our hearts, I would say 80% of the hearts that come in that I track are smokers. If they're under 60, it's probably higher than that. Over 60, not necessarily, because then age kind of takes a part in that too. But the younger ones are almost all smokers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So to know how, if they're breathing, do you just put your hand on their chest to see if they're going up
I
and down?
do
Or?
because a lot of times when you're out there, if it's windy, you can't. So we don't do the breathe thing anymore. Yeah, I recommend that you do, or even on their belly, because you'll probably feel it there better. But yeah, I recommend you do put your hand on there gently and feel for movement, because sometimes you really can't tell by looking, especially if they're in a winter coat or whatever. Because it's hard to tell, because it could be diabetic, it could be low blood pressure, it could be, lots of things that make someone pass out. So that is what I recommend doing. When I teach a full class, we talk about put your hand on the chest and watch for the chest to rise, and you'll feel it better than you'll see it. Yeah. But moving, groaning, if they're groaning, they have a heartbeat. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Millie knows where to find me if you need something. Otherwise, the other cool thing, and I'm going back to the smoking thing, is your body will start to heal the minute you quit. So if somebody stops smoking overnight, during the night, your body's little alveoli start to clean up and your cilia start to move again, and within about 15 years, you're back to none. Back to like you were a non-smoker. Takes
Awesome.
time.
Thank you, Miss Debbie. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you guys would read this snack,
Component to heart health and lung health and everything else that I just can't. So one of the tools I use is to remind people, and this works a lot, not to be sexist here, but works really well with men, because they get it. Not that women don't work on cars, but we all know what filters are, right? Filter's job is to get the pieces and particles of dirt out of our system. So when I pull these out, and these are some I got from different places, and I say, what would you put this in your car? And they're like, oh no. I say, well, what are you really doing? What are you doing when you are sucking in all that chemical and all that tar into your lungs? So I had some places save me some. And they wouldn't think of letting your filter be like this, but that's what they're doing in their lungs, and this is totally how the lungs really look. They're icky and black, or green if it's pot. Seen some pretty good green ones. I mean, that one guy, they put the dye in and they couldn't see the dye because he had so much pot residue in there that they couldn't tell where the dye was and where the pot was. So anyway, it just makes sense. This is how your lunch is supposed to be. Are they gonna get a little bit of trickles from pollution and stuff? Absolutely. But they're not gonna look like this. This is sucking it in deep, right? So, just a reminder that it really does have an effect. It really is important and it's well worth making the change if somebody's ready to. So these tools are are you ready to quit? Are you nicotine dependent?